This is Mark Gunn Media.
Hit it!
Welcome to Gunshots Straight from the Hip. I'm your host, Mark Gunn. The views expressed on this program are those of the host and guests and not necessarily reflective of anyone or any entity associated with this broadcast. This episode, Baraagua, The Awakening, The Conclusion. I want to personally thank everybody who has subscribed to the podcast. And remember, you can download it at markgunmedia.com, iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, YouTube, Google Podcasts, envisionradio.com, or wherever you download your podcasts. I also want to thank those of you that listen from anywhere in the U.S. and around the world. Bonjour to our listeners in France. Guten Tag to those of you listening in Germany. To my friends in Ireland. Diahuch. Apakabar, Indonesia. Konnichiwa, Japan. To my family in Nigeria. In Leo. Hello to my neighbors to the north in Canada. Hello, Bangladesh. Hola to my friends in Brazil. G'day in Australia. And hello to those of you listening in the UK. We would love to hear from you, and you can reach out to us by going to our website at markgunmedia.com or through envisionradio.com. In our last episode, plans were made and finally executed in order to free black people in America from the oppressive rule of the administration. When we left off, contact had finally been made with the citizens of the United States. We are Baraagua. We are the original man. The black-clad men and women among you are my family. We are who we were always meant to be, the true rulers of this world. I continued. Here in America, you have continued a legacy of pure evil for well over 400 years. That ends today. Your sanctioning of the barbarism committed against people of color will be dealt with here and now. Your chief law enforcement officer, Jefferson Beauregard Sessions, has abused his power for the last time, and there can be only one remedy for that. I paused and nodded at the woman restraining Sessions. With a nod of acknowledgement, 1 second later, a loud snap. His neck was broken and he fell into a heap, dead on the floor. After the shock of what had just happened wore off, I continued to speak. Vladimir Putin, your brand of unspeakable evil has haunted the Russian people for far too long. Too many have died by your hand because of your political ambitions. With that, another member of the Koiska ushered in Madam President Assad, who raised a handgun, pointed it right between Putin's eyes, and pulled the trigger. Her neck was also snapped a fraction of a second later. I finally addressed Stephen Miller and Ivanka Trump. This country has always profited from the pain of its citizens of color. There were some 15 American companies that made their money because of slavery. As of 2 minutes ago, those companies and your fortunes no longer exist. She and Miller looked as if they had seen a ghost. For hundreds of years, blacks in this country have been asking for reparations, and for hundreds of years, they've watched you pay every other ethnic group you've ever wronged, but not them. No matter. I had a team of 7-year-old children redirect every dime of profit those companies ever made, and after some rather extensive research, the money was paid to the descendants of those you've enslaved. I stopped long enough to let that soak in. Just as I thought, Stephen Miller looked like he could explode. Punked by a bunch of 7-year-olds. The look on his face alone was priceless. You, Miss Trump, will be spared. Mr. Miller, on the other hand. With that, he was lifted from the floor with one hand and strangled to death. I turned my attention back to Ivanka. The remainder of your life will be spent in Guantanamo Bay. You remember that place, right? The prison your dad wanted to keep open? You'll be put there to fend for yourselves, and if you try to escape, you'll be killed on the spot. There was one last piece of business to tend to. The President of the United States. There were quite a few disagreements as to how to handle President Trump. It was suggested that since it was his racist, sexist, homophobic, and xenophobic vitriol that set this entire chain of events into motion, he should be killed. However, it took a child to remind us that mistreating our elders is not our way. Speaking of your father, he can golf to his heart's content because he'll be going with you. Of course, there are no golf courses, and the only clubs he'll have access to will be those in a child's play set. After all, He's had a petulant child's mindset his entire life, hasn't he? We've begun treatment to reverse the effects of his mental illness because it's more humanity than the administration has ever shown. While his mind will be restored, he'll also have to live with the implanted memories of every evil he's ever perpetrated, including every person ever killed, directly or indirectly. He may never be able to swing a golf club ever again. With that, the Trumps were taken away. My final address was for the American people. You were a nation of great promise and greater hypocrisy. Your hubris and arrogance as a nation cost you years of progress. You've squandered precious resources, and because of your ignorance when it comes to innovation, the millions of jobs that could have been created in order to advance technologically never came to pass. You willingly allowed this country to become stuck on stupid, so the path you were on until now was inevitable. Your idea of democracy and freedom were always a sick joke that was never funny to the rest of the world. Your actions over the last several hundred years have had a negative effect on everyone you've ever touched. That ends right now. With those words, my image vanished, and I could sense a whole new level of fear. Epilogue. It's been 10 years since the awakening, and America is totally different from what she was. For the time being, there is no constitutional republic, no elections. The Baraagua has made several appointments of regional leaders charged with working with representatives of various communities. America's ill-gotten gains have been stripped and treaties renegotiated. An agreement was made to return the land stolen from Native Americans back to them. In exchange, they would become teachers, passing along their knowledge of holistic medicine and environmental science. America took a page from Prime Minister Justin Trudeau III's playbook in Canada. Racism is now a federal crime, and a slowly rebuilding media is now governed by the same truth and reporting standards used up north. The Koiska remains a constant presence not only in America, but around the globe, not as an occupying force, but as a reminder of who we are and what we are capable of. Children worldwide now have the benefits of the education received by kids here in the motherland. Math, science, history, music, the building blocks of a vibrant civilization are here to be taught. Absolute truth giving absolute power. As for me, I'm watching the children that put all of this into motion take their rightful place as the leaders of this brave new world, all the while thinking of the woman who started it all, Mother Nubia, Ukopila, life. You've been listening to Baraagua, The Awakening, an Afro-futuristic short story written by yours truly, copyright 2017-2021, Mark Gunn Media, Inc. Special thanks to Sean Pitts and John and Yvette Hoffman, language consultants Yolanda Nanafuku, Asha Hassan, and Abdul Ahmed. My eternal gratitude for their invaluable guidance and education. The complete recording of this story will be available on my website at markgunmedia.com. Any and all feedback is certainly welcome at mark@markgunmedia.com. That's mark@markgunmedia.com. Coming up, there's an online campaign to extend the celebration of Black History Month in what's being called Melanin March. Why? Because all throughout the month of February, we've had to deal with some white folks having a hissy fit. One of the biggest reasons? They have a problem with not being able to use the N-word. We'll talk about it right after this. If you're an advertiser, one of the most important things about getting your message out is actually standing out from the rest of the crowd. If you're listening to this program right now, this is where you'd hear your commercial. As an exclusive sponsor of Gunshots Straight from the Hip, your commercial is professionally produced and gets a longer shelf life based on your needs. Gunshots Straight from the Hip is a unique and compelling program unlike anything else in the marketplace. Episodes are available for download on iTunes, TuneIn, and MarkGunMedia.com. And depending on how you tailor your message, the potential for new and repeat customers is that much greater. Best of all, it's extremely cost-effective. If you'd like more information on how you can be a sponsor of this broadcast, call Mark Gunn Media, Inc. at 502-407-0283. That's 502-407-0283. Or log on to markgunmedia.com. For downloads of this and past episodes and information about all the multimedia services we offer, log on to our website at www.markgunmedia.com. That's markgunmedia.com. Welcome back to Gunshot Straight from the Hip. I am your host, Mark Gunn. Remember, you can download this and past episodes on our website at markgunmedia.com. You can also go to iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, YouTube, Google Podcasts, InVisionRadio.com, and anywhere you download your podcasts. And no matter where you're listening from here in the United States, thank you. And we also have to say hello again to our international audience, listeners in France, Germany, Ireland, Indonesia, Japan, Nigeria, Canada, Bangladesh, Australia, the UK, and Brazil. Thank you so much. We love to hear from you, and you can do that by getting to us on the website at markgunmedia.com or simply emailing me at mark@markgunmedia.com. Before the break, we told you about an ongoing effort here in the States to have a redo on Black History Month. We're calling it Melanin March. Why? Because all month long, instead of simply celebrating our culture and our history makers, we've had to deal with petulant children. Frankly, some white folks asking stupid questions like, why can't we have a White History Month? And why can't we say the N-word?
All right, History Month. Let's get started destroying the patriarchy.
Ooh, sorry I'm late. We can start now that I'm here. Oh, I'm sorry. This is the weekly meeting of History Months, right?
Right.
And you are?
I'm White History Month. No.
Yeah, history months are for minorities.
White men are a minority. Haven't you read the comments section lately? Listen, we need to tell our story. And if not us, then who?
85% of TV writers and film directors tell your story.
Every major news outlet tells your story.
Come on, guys. We put a lot of thought into this.
No, you didn't.
February. That's got a great sound to it. That sneaky R in there. That's fun.
What about February?
For my month.
What is happening?
You want to do White History Month in February.
No. We want January. But our think tanks think non-white people, think white people come first, and we don't want to reinforce any stereotypes, even the subconscious ones. You know what I'm talking about, right, brother? February. It's the second month, it has the fewest days, it's humble, and it says we can do with less. Dude.
February is Black History Month.
March.
March is Women's History Month.
Oh, Women, March. April.
April is Arab Americans Month.
May?
May is Asian American History Month.
Oh, and Haitian History Month.
Here we go.
National Correct Posture Month. Jewish American Heritage.
June.
Lupus.
June is Black Music
Melanoma.
Month.
They steal it anyway.
You get 2 months.
Health awareness.
It's also
National
LGBTQA.
I see.
National
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
Awareness Month. May also has ALS, asthma, Huntington's disease.
July. Fireworks, lake houses, paid vacation, white history. Nailed it. So, while I've got you here, I want to discuss white holidays. How about a day honoring the 44 and a half white men that have led this great country? A day for our presidents.
President's Day?
What's that now?
February.
There's that month again.
Why shouldn't it be February?
It should be. Period.
22 history months in May.
Are you done yet?
As if it wasn't crowded enough back across Pacific.
You want to talk about crowding out?
Asian American History Month is right.
Yeah, please don't agree with
If
me.
they can share May, why can't we share February?
Do I agree with White History Month?
You're right. If he gets to choose, then why can't we?
Really? This is how they always get their way.
Native History Month is right, guys. This isn't gonna happen.
So, why are you still here?
Well, my dad said to stay and not leave until I got what I came for.
You can't colonize history months.
Well, we want a History Month too.
You feel left out?
You know what, Hispanic Heritage Month? You feel left out.
Dude, we're here because of you.
Because of you, every month is White History Month.
Every week is White History Week.
Every day is White History Day.
So why am I here?
You are the manifestation of a vocal minority, of a waning majority, afraid to face the reality that minorities are the new majority.
Do you get what's happening here?
So you're saying that, like at every other point in my life, all of the work has been done for me. I don't have to do anything. I'm going to retire early.
Congratulations. I don't know what to call you.
Whitey, it's what my friends call me.
It's a trap.
Now, while we were having a little bit of fun there is some real value to actually having a White History Month.
I think we do need a White History Month because the American history that's taught in schools is so whitewashed, we don't learn the real story. We learn lies like George Washington chopping down a cherry tree, but not the fact that George had 18 slaves before he turned 18. 18 slaves. We learned that Abraham Lincoln said 7 years ago, but not that he said, I am not, nor ever have been, in favor of bringing about in any way the social and political equality of the black and white races. There must be the position of superior and inferior, and I am in favor of having the superior position assigned to the white race. They don't put that on the penny, partially because it would make the penny too long, and partly because our schools don't teach an honest version of American history. And that's why we need White History Month. History shouldn't just be a list of names and dates. It's supposed to give us context for the present. How can we learn about Harriet Tubman and Frederick Douglass and MLK's response to inequality without understanding the true history of the country that enshrined that inequality into law? For example, in regular history, they tell you the Second Amendment was created to protect against tyranny. But during White History Month, you would learn the truth, that the right to bear arms was added to the Constitution so white men could keep their slaves in check. That is a true fact. See, at the time the Constitution was written, most states required every able-bodied man who lived there to serve on a slave patrol. These states had posses of white men to keep black people in line. And in the 1700s, they didn't have the kind of advanced adhesive technologies we have now. So slaves couldn't wear name tags. So the slave patroller guys just stopped every black person. Over time, those slave patrols eventually evolved into militias. And during the Revolutionary War, those militias became the American army. And when the war ended, America had a bunch of roving bands of men who had guns. So they put those men in charge of putting down slave rebellions. And eventually they put them in charge of enforcing all the laws, or as they called it back then, policing. Now, when the southern states decided they'd rather own human beings than be part of America, these militias became the Confederate Army. And after the Civil War, the militias came back home with nothing to do. So a few of them started a fun fraternity called the Circle of Brothers. Now, you've probably never heard of the Circle of Brothers fraternity because they always lost at the homecoming step shows. Plus, they used their Greek name, Kuklos, meaning circle, and of course, clan, meaning family. You call them the Ku Klux Klan. That's who enforced racial terrorism during Reconstruction. That's who used violence to enforce Jim Crow laws. That's who carried out the lynchings during the Red Summer of 1919. That's who still stops and frisks black people at 10 times the rate of white people. That's who still shoots and kills unarmed black citizens at 3.5 times the rate of whites. Because for most of America's history, there's been no difference between the Klan, the police, and plain old racists. So why don't we all know this? Because while Southern men were busy forming the KKK, Southern women were busy forming a fun club called the United Daughters of the Confederacy. The United Daughters joined school boards and formed lobbying groups to make textbooks more favorable to Confederates. And they got so powerful that textbook publishers had to get their approval before school boards agreed to purchase social studies books, ensuring that their version of history is the one that got taught in schools. So it is impossible to understand politics, the black community's relationship with the police, or why we even need to say Black Lives Matter if we don't learn the history of this country. So yes, let's have a White History Month. Let's have 12 of them. Otherwise, we'll never learn information that's crucial to understanding our own country, like the fact that once upon a time, there were slave patrols who became militias, who became Revolutionary Army, who became the police, who became the Confederate Army, who became the KKK. Just because they don't teach that in schools doesn't mean you can't learn it.
Unfortunately, as long as we as taxpayers don't put real pressure on American school systems, history will always be a lie agreed upon. Now to the second part of the reason why Black History Month is being extended all over the country: whiny, petulant little children wanting to know Why is it that they can't say the N-word?
Why does racism only go one way? That's what I want to know. I see racism against whites every day.
Take hip-hop. We've talked about this on the show before. You have African-American rappers saying N-word this and N-word that, but a Caucasian can't.
So say it.
Say what?
Say the word you want to say.
I'm not saying that I want to say it. I'm just saying that I can't.
Sure you can. Say it. Say it right now. I will say it with you.
Okay, this is hypocritical. You know we can't.
Sure you can. This is America. Both of you. Say it.
All right, I think we can move on.
Why move on when you want to say it? Both of you want to say it. Huh? All together, everybody.
In order to get a little better understanding of this obvious mental malfunction, a little context is in order.
There's still in American Army uniforms.
It was said without thinking, painting an entire race with a single word. But it wasn't always a slur. Originally, the Latin Niger just meant black.
Cock-a-doodle-doo.
But at the dawn of America, Niger became Negar to describe some of the first shipments of African slaves.
What's your name?
Kunta Kinte. My name is Toby.
Hi. That's a good.
And with slavery, the word was contorted into its current, dark, degrading, hateful insult for African Americans.
We are the Ku Klux Klan. We hate Look out. The Klan is getting bigger.
Over time, it has appeared in everything from ugly propaganda to cartoons to nursery rhymes. Eeny Meeny didn't always end with catch a tiger by the toe. It was tossed about casually in movies well into the 20th century, part of the way of life, but also sometimes to raise consciousness.
You
And in the civil rights era, the stigma came to a head. Author James Baldwin in the 1963 documentary Take This Hammer.
We have invented the. I didn't invent it. White people invented it.
In the 1970s emerged a new willingness to explore the impact of the word and even satirize it.
And isn't it a lovely morning? Up yours.
If you two ever really started going at one another, inside of 5 minutes, he'd be calling you.
Don't say it.
It hardly disappeared in the 1980s and 90s, though white people rarely said the word publicly. Some black people did. A lot.
Black people? This have got to go.
Straight out of Compton, crazy named Ice Cube. From the gang called with attitudes. Cause I never hesitate to put on his back.
As a society, we've tried to ignore it, ban it, literally bury it.
The NAACP held this symbolic funeral for the N-word.
And we've perhaps added more gravity to the word just by refusing to say it.
Whenever a white lady on CNN with nice hair says the N-word, that's just white people getting away with saying that's all that is.
As you may know, in this country, African Americans are the trendsetters when it comes to style and culture. So when that word was repurposed for our own use and turned something into a positive in the opinion of a lot in the black community, there were whites that had a problem with it. It's like the attitude was, how dare you take our word that we use to degrade you and turn it into something else that we can't use?
CNN received a complicated question from a viewer. Why can black people say the N-word, but white people can't? Now, the question itself may be tiring or frustrating for black folks. Why is it that we have to keep explaining the history of racism in America?
People who are allegedly confused are white people. And my experience is that white people aren't confused, they disagree with it. And that's very different.
That's Dr. Neil Lester. He created the first college course focused solely on studying the N-word.
I don't want to dismiss the question, but what I'm saying is that question is so loaded with nuance that is actually more about the person asking the question than it is about the question.
Now, it's worth pointing out that not all black folks feel the same about using the N-word. Take the NAACP. In 2007, the group held a funeral for the N-word, hoping to bury the word in all its variants once and for all. But there are black people who still use the word, and some white people still asking why they can't.
So let's say there is a double standard and black people have permission to say it.
I love black people, but I hate.
There are so many ways in which our American history has been a double standard. Jim Crow was a double standard. The fact that there are a group of people who look like me who were enslaved in this country is a double standard. The saying of this word is not really a double standard. It's just saying, you know, here's some consequences if you say this.
White people have used and continue to use the N-word to oppress black people. So when a white person says the N-word, even if they're reciting Huck Finn in class or rapping along at a concert, it carries that historical weight of racism.
Wait. You gotta bleep one single word, though.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I do it?
You can say it until the cows come home. In the privacy of your own room, you can say it out loud. But I guarantee you, I've seen some social media stuff. If you say it to the wrong person, you may get knocked out. I'm not advocating violence. I'm just saying that that's what some people do because the word has a visceral response to many people. This is a word that is still to this day loaded with violence and hurt and trauma and pain. And nothing about the experience of black and brown people has changed in that regard.
So, if you're white and wondering why you can't say the N-word, ask yourself this. Why do I care so much? And why do I even feel the need to say the word in the first place?
Take the cautionary tale of country music star Morgan Wallen.
The 27-year-old country star tells ET he is embarrassed and sorry after he was caught on video using the N-word outside his home. The video was captured on a neighbor's doorbell camera as Wallen returned home after a night out. In his apology, Wallen adds, quote, "There are no excuses to use this type of language, ever," adding, "I promise to do better." But was it too little, too late? The country star's recording contract was suspended. Radio stations, streaming services, and CMT pulled his recordings, and some of country's biggest stars, including Maren Morris and Kelsey Ballerini, were outraged.
What'd you learn from that experience?
I gotta be careful of who I keep around me, I think. It can get a little muddy because everybody doesn't have your best interests at heart.
Now, here's the sheer stupidity of his supporters, those that were saying that his First Amendment rights were violated, that his record company shouldn't have done what they did. So they increased his album sales by 300% by buying downloads in the whole 9 yards, thinking that it was going to be supporting him. Well, because a lot of people are uneducated about how the music business works, in addressing this on social media, I asked him to look up, and you can do this too if you don't know, Google 360 deals. Long story short, none of the money that his supporters spent trying to help him went to him. It all went to the record company that actually suspended his contract for using racist language. Now, here's what gets me.
So you mean to tell me that white people are saying the N-word, but then when they got called out, now they want to have a discussion on why nobody should say it? So when you're called out because you shouldn't say it, nobody should say it. You don't have a say. You don't have a say.
It's the arrogance and the thinking that because they can no longer use a word that has been taken from them, that is now outside of their culture, nobody else should be allowed to use it either. Here's the thing. Personally, I don't use the word unless it's in a historical context. However, those that are in my inner circle, black, white, or whatever, don't use it around me. And they do that out of respect not only for me, but for themselves. Am I going to knock the next brother or sister that uses it? No, I'm not. That would make me a hypocrite. So that those that are complaining about this whole issue have to do, you got to take the L. Like Ice Cube once said, you lost that word. You can't have it back. Here's the thing. Black people need to simply stop trying to explain this to you. You know better. You've had over 400 years to learn this lesson. See, the problem some of you have is not so much the word itself. You just don't want to deal with the consequences of using it. That's on you. After all, you do have a First Amendment right to say what you want to say. You can use that word all day long if you want. Go ahead. But I will tell you, results may vary. You've been listening to Gunshots Straight from the Hip. The views expressed are those of the host and guests and not reflective of any business entity or anyone associated with this broadcast. If you have any comments or want more information on how to be a sponsor, log on to our website at markgunmedia.com or call us at 502-407-0283. That's 502-407-0283. Thank you for listening.
Mark Gun Media. No hype, no hoopla, just damn good work.